The mainstream legacy media who will not cover any of the alternative parties. They will not cover me. They won't cover Derek. Derek doesn't even get invited to the leaders' debates. And it's very disrespectful when the other candidates actually agree to just confine the debates to themselves. Mm-hmm. And so what it does is it's so disrespectful to the voters because they don't get to see all of the candidates. We meet people every day that say, oh, I've never even heard of the party. And that's because of the media, and that's because of the legacy people that are refusing to say, you know what, there is a very righteous democratic process that should be followed here. And as long as it benefits the other candidates, they'll take the advantage, and they're not going to actually speak out and be respectful to voters.
Some of you may recall previous interviews Tom has done with Rebel News, from Freedom Convoy coverage in Ottawa, where he acted as a spokesperson and played an integral role in the logistics, to regular Freedom rallies that happened across Ontario, namely the last one that we did together in Toronto. And more recently, invited to speak tonight at a debate that was advertised as an event that was to be open to the public at the Buckhorn Community Centre, being organized by the Buckhorn Ratepayers Association. But there was a series of events that unfolded here.
The reason I'm not in the debate is because they had implemented a mask mandate. And I don't believe in masks. I never have, and I am not going to capitulate. I spent a lot of time preparing for this debate because I believe the questions that I was given in this debate are excellent questions, and unfortunately, I don't get to debate the other candidates. So we thought, why don't we just come down and I'll read you the answers that I prepared based on the questions that I was given.
What compelled you to come out and listen to Tom's speech tonight?
Well, I came out because I wanted one more chance to hear all the candidates speak, and arrived at the venue only to be told that because I am medically exempt from wearing a mask, I'm not allowed to come in, which therefore makes me a second-class citizen, right? So I've been working with Tom and his campaign from the beginning. I knew that we had to make some really hard choices, and that the other three parties were basically telling us the same thing over and over, and we have to have a new way of looking at politics in Ontario, and in its time we need to do it now, and we have to take a chance. We've got to stop saying, oh well, the little guys can't do anything. Well, you know what, the little guys can, and we can, and I just encourage every one of you to get out there and vote, and find out what the Ontario Party is really about, because they have some really, really great ideas.
So I'm a retired military officer. I spent 25 years in the Canadian Army. I have lived in 12 different cities, 3 provinces in the last 24 years. Up until last September, I was a software teacher at Georgian College in Barrie, where my former spouse had been posted to CFB Borden, and I was fired in September for refusing to take the jab.
Basically, I came out today, as you can see, as a sign on my truck that I'm voting for freedom. And I worked with Tom down at the truck convoy for 3 weeks. I know he's a freedom fighter, and I'm definitely, he's supporting any of the freedom candidates, because we need a change.
I actually came out because I wanted to hear somebody that could instill some hope back in the citizens of Ontario. And from what I've heard of Tom in the past and what I heard tonight, I felt hopeful for the first time since the convoy in Ottawa in January. And sadly, Tom was refused the opportunity to participate in the debate with the other parties. And I really wanted to see him stand up and speak up on behalf of the fringe minority that has been squashed and set aside as undeserving citizens of our province.
I have a master's degree in business. I have managed staffs over 300 plus people, both military and civilian. And I have I've had multi-million-dollar budgets for infrastructure, and I've managed over $1 billion worth of infrastructure for the Canadian military or the Canadian government. So I'm quite familiar with labor relations. unions, and, government regulation.
My main goal was my heart broke when Maxime Bernier couldn't speak at the federal election. And when I heard Tom Marazzo couldn't speak at this one, and I had the time and the ability to be able to be present, to be able to voice my concerns, I thought this is the time to do it. Yeah.
Can you tell us just a quick 1-2 of what you said in the debates to the candidates?
Well, I listened right through to the end. I was the last person to ask a question. And I did hear, as most politicians try to tell us how they're going to fix our problems. But the one thing they didn't address was how they're going to fix the division that's in our country. How I love my country, but it's not the same anymore. And it's broken up families, it's broken up so many people, and we need to start working at that. And I hope that me asking not just the candidates, but people listening to my questions, it would resonate with them, that people are hurting on both sides here. And it's 2.5 years, and we need to get so that we love and care for everyone again, as what Canada used to be like.
The first thing we're going to do is literally hire back all of the doctors and all the nurses that have been put on unpaid leave or fired, because every one of those people spent years developing the skills that they have. They've gone through universities, colleges, they've put all the time and effort into it. And Doug Ford has literally made them disposable because they refused to be economically coerced into undertaking a failed medical injection that they know is killing their patients.
What are you hoping to see as we approach the election deadline and subsequently thereafter?
I'm hoping to see the Ontario Party have a number of seats that they can be the voice for the citizens of Ontario that have been treated very discriminatorily over the last 2.5 years. I'd love to see the opportunity for families to reunite, for employees, communities to reunite as more of the truth becomes apparent.
What we're saying is no, there's not enough houses for Ontarians, so there will be a moratorium on all foreign investment in housing. All of it.
You could. I know this sounds really far-fetched, but I really would like to see the Ontario Party be the opposition, like to have enough votes to keep the other guys on their toes and be there to really ask the hard questions and not let them have a runaway with what they think we're doing. So, and plus, I'd really like to shut Trudeau down. So if it takes that, then that's what we're going to do. So I think the Ontario Party believes in people and at the grassroots level, and that's where we need to start making changes. And every single question that he answered tonight was about engaging the community, engaging people to be part of the process. And we have to not be sitting back and waiting for someone else to do it. We all have to engage in politics, whether you like it or not.
One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to partner with the Western provinces and get a pipeline going from Alberta into Ontario and maybe from BC to here. We're going to eliminate the PST on gasoline and diesel while the prices are at this level. We're going to get rid of that. And right now, that's almost a 16-cent saving. It's not a lot. It's not a lot, but it is within the Ontario government's power to do it. We're going to eliminate the carbon tax and the industrial carbon tax and seek to challenge the federal carbon tax. We're going to develop a strategic oil reserve to cushion consumers during supply shocks. And of course, this supply shock is coming from Ukraine and Russia. Interestingly, we are the #1 supplier of crude oil to the United States, not Russia. They don't get it from Saudi. The Americans get it from us. It's our oil, and it's high time we start benefiting from it.
Well, I would like to see some positive results, like maybe you don't have to put a mask on, which I don't wear a mask anyway, but neither does Tom, and that's why we weren't allowed in the local community center and came down to the park here. So they barred Tom from the candidates' debate, which is not freedom, which is not democratic, and so I would like to see some freedoms and some democracy come back.
It's like a little clique. I would like to see that politicians treat everyone equally, even their own people that are debating with them. It's not right that Tom couldn't be there to talk. It's not right that one politician says something very horrific like, "Oh, I'm not going to feel bad for the things that we did through pandemic if it saved one life or saved some lives," and then made the other person feel bad for it. Nobody wants anybody to die. That's the silliest statement I've ever heard. They need to stop that kind of stuff. Politicians need to stop that stuff and address the real issues. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter how many highways you make. It doesn't matter how many teachers you bring or physicians you bring. If everybody hates each other in the country, it really doesn't matter.
If we form a government in this province, the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Ontario and the Nursing Licensing Board will all be removed on day one. They will be unemployed. And then they will be investigated for the complicity, their role in this entire pandemic. And how a body that is supposed to investigate complaints from a patient is now getting inside the doctor-patient treatment room and dictating how a doctor is doing their job.
For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini in the riding of Peterborough-Kawartha with Ontario Party candidate Tom Marazzo. Tell me a little bit about what unfolded in terms of you trying to enter the debates and subsequently what happened here on the lawns of this public space.
Right. So we were actually invited to a debate for a change, which has been incredibly rare. This is only the second opportunity that I had to be in a debate. And I received the questions last night, and also a notice that they would be imposing a mask mandate for all who entered the building. And of course, I've been campaigning the entire time on the fact that we're against masking mandates and COVID-19 mandates and all of that stuff. So I refuse to capitulate to that request. And I tried to find a compromise, and I do want to say, on the record for sure, that the woman that I was dealing with, who was hosting this, wonderful lady, she tried to work with it, but we just came to an impasse. And then, unfortunately, the mayor got involved, and that's when things started to get very uncomfortable. So, as a compromise, we decided, because I prepared very well for this debate. And so we moved down to this park where we currently are standing, and I read my answers to the question that I was supposed to be answering inside the debate with the other uniparty candidates. And unfortunately, this debate, and like all the other debates that I was not invited to, none of the uniparty candidates have ever spoken out against the other registered Ontario candidates not getting invited. So they got an advantage, and yet again, they took another one. And they're not doing these things because they're principled people.
Yeah. And who do you think what suffers most when not every registered candidate is brought to the debate table?
Well, first off, it's incredibly disrespectful to voters, because there's the mainstream legacy media who will not cover any of the alternative parties. They will not cover me. They won't cover Derek. Derek doesn't even get invited to the leaders' debates. And it's very disrespectful when the other candidates actually agree to just confine the debates to themselves. Mm-hmm. And so what it does is it's so disrespectful to the voters, because they don't get to see all of the candidates. We meet people every day that say, "Oh, I've never even heard of the party." And that's because of the media, and that's because of the legacy people that are refusing to say, you know what, there is a very righteous democratic process that should be followed here. And as long as it benefits the other candidates, they'll take the advantage, and they're not going to actually speak out and be respectful to voters.
Now, going through Peterborough, for instance, I see that there are a lot of Tom Marazzo signs, and arguably perhaps even more than the typically conservative held riding, the PC candidate Dave Smith. what do you see on the ground when you're campaigning, when you're out canvassing? Do you feel that sense of, preference to you over who exists there now?
Well, I will say the supporters that I do know that I have are unbelievable. Like it is incredibly humbling to be perfectly honest. But they can only do so much because in this particular riding, there's 99,000 approximately eligible voters inside this riding. And it's really difficult to reach everybody. And it would actually help if the mainstream media would give us some coverage, would be respectful to the voters. So the challenge that we have is that once people meet us, they are really incredibly supportive. It's just getting their attention has been extremely difficult. And if the mainstream media would have helped get the attention, then I think we would have probably won this hands down. And I don't know what the results are, but I'm just saying my confidence level would be extremely high. But right now, it's just too soon to tell, and the election's only a couple days away.
And speaking of which, as you finish up your canvassing efforts and the campaign trail, what are you, of course, hoping to see as the campaign wraps up?
Well, I want to win. As every day has progressed in this campaign, just a little bit more motivated, just day after day after day. I want to win this really bad because we can literally be the change that is required for Ontario to get back on its feet and get rid of people that want to lock you down, want to inject you with a dangerous chemical that is unproven and has not done its clinical trials, and really just focus on families. And getting smaller government instead of big government that's intruding on every aspect of your life. And we want to restore some confidence in all the institutions that we have in this province. Because right now, nobody has confidence in anything that isn't their own, inside their own families right now. So, if I'm unsuccessful, then we will continue to fight in other ways. And I will be in Ottawa again at the end of June for James Topp's arrival for Canada Marches and the other organization I'm affiliated with, which is Veterans for Freedom. So if I'm not, even if I do get elected, I actually will be in Ottawa, and so will Derek Sloan. If we're both elected, we'll still be in Ottawa for that arrival. So there's a lot of work to do in this province. And, maybe I don't get in this time, but I'm certain I will the next.
What do you have to say, just in closing, of the democratic process, looking forward another 4 years, if there's even that in place at that time?
Truthfully, I do. I speak to people a lot, and I read, and I watch, I observe, and I'm looking at the trends of what's happening in this country and in this province. And again, they voted down, the federal government voted down the people's freedom to fly. That's just one more example of government overreach in this country. And I think at this point, if the things continue to trend the way they are, we will be lucky that we even are allowed to have an election 4 years from now, if these psychopaths continue on the trend that they are on.
Well, thank you, Tom, for taking the time to chat with me. That's Tom Marazzo for the Ontario Party, and for Rebel News in Buckhorn, Ontario, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you appreciate the coverage that I bring to you, then please consider chipping in at realreporters.ca. As you may know, we do not take a penny from the government, and thus we rely solely on our viewers to fund our work. To see all of our reports on the Ontario election and help chip in to cover our costs, please head over to realreporters.ca.